Hello, friends. Welcome to the Logistics of Logistics podcast. My name is Joe Lynch. Thank you so much for joining us. Today's topic is Georgia, the future of supply chain with my friend Bob Kosek. How's it going, Bob?
Hey, Joe. I'm doing well. Thanks for your time today.
I'm excited to talk to you. I told you before we hit the record button that I say it all the time on my podcast that I only talk to people from three places: Texas, Georgia, and the rest of the planet. Good things are happening down there. And so please, we're going to talk about why good things are happening down there, but please introduce yourself and your company and where you're calling from today.
Yeah, for sure, Joe. Why talk to anybody else, I should say. We got you covered. I'm Bob Kosek. I'm the division director of the global commerce team at the Georgia Department of Economic Development. Basically, we are the sales and marketing arm of the state of Georgia. So we partner with businesses to help them set up locations in the state, help them export their products outside of the state, uh, help with tourism, arts council, and centers of innovation with our key industry sectors. And basically, we are a one-stop shop, a concierge for the state of Georgia.
Yep. While we were prepping for this interview, I was talking to you. You're from Ohio. I'm from Michigan. So we are the birthplace of the supply chain. But we've all watched, there's still tons of supply chain in Ohio, tons of it in Michigan. But 20, 30 years ago, you would have looked down at Georgia and said, oh, I don't know what they do down there, but it's not supply chain. It's that it would be a one-off if it was down. I guess we had automotive assembly plants down there. But what happened in my lifetime, and yours also, I guess, we had I-75 go from the north down all the way down to Florida. And along that I-75 corridor, and it's not just I-75, I think that was the first and maybe the biggest. There's a whole bunch of other expressways that allowed the world of supply chains to grow. And it grew way past the Midwest. And some people would call the Rust Belt, but it's still the biggest manufacturing hubs. But it all flowed down to Georgia. And I think over the last decade or so, it's just been an absolute explosion of business down there. Please elaborate.
Yeah, so Joe, you said it better than I could say it. I think we've accelerated here recently, and it's a commitment to a couple of things: a business-friendly approach, not saying it in the way of businesses that are looking to do business, helping them and helping find the yes rather than putting up obstacles. It's identifying emerging technologies and emerging markets. So being at the forefront of technologies like the battery EV e-mobility industry with large scale users like Hyundai, Kia, Rivian, all making pretty significant investments in the state of Georgia as well as their suppliers. But it's interesting. If you look at the development, I was a history major in college. If you look at the development of the state of Georgia, yeah, and the United States, it follows the coasts, it follows the rivers. Atlanta was really that first major city kind of that developed inland that wasn't on a canal or a river or one of the Great Lakes. And it's because of the railroads. And the original name of Atlanta was Terminus. We were the end of the line. You had a lot of product flowing through here, going up north or going out to the west. And that legacy continues today. You look at the interstate highway system, we've got 75 that you mentioned that runs from Michigan down to Miami. Interstate 95 hugging the coast, basically connecting again Miami to Maine. And then Interstate 20 that runs east to west from the Carolinas over to Texas. And so there's multiple ways to ship those products. And really, it's a lot of luck just to be in a great place that a lot of people really want to be.
Yep. But there's lots of places that are great weather and lower cost than, say, the Midwest or the Northeast that have not developed. And so it wasn't just being business friendly. It was more than that. And we'll get into that in just a minute. So, Bob, tell us a little bit about you. Where'd you grow up? Where'd you go to school? Some career highlights before you joined the Department of Economic Development for Georgia. And then why did you join the Georgia Economic Development?
Absolutely, Joe. So I am a native of Cleveland, Ohio. Like you mentioned, I grew up in Ohio. So Ohio, Michigan, we're Paisan. Same tribe, I think. Just we're different colors on Saturday and Sunday.
Oh, that's for sure. Yeah, your Cleveland team beat up my Tigers. That was our dream season because we haven't had much, but I was happy to see them go float.
Yeah, I feel the same way when the Tigers and Lions, look good too. I feel like there's a whole Lake Erie bros. I don't know if you've heard that term before, but Buffalo, Cleveland, and Detroit kind of supporting each other. Grew up in Cleveland on the east side. Uh, Moved to college in Southeast Ohio at Ohio University. Spent a great 4.5 years in Athens, Ohio, and then met a girl from Georgia, as so many people I think do, and followed her back down here after college and did graduate school at Georgia State in Atlanta. Spent about 6 years working at the Metro Atlanta Chamber and their economic development team in the Metro Atlanta area, which is a 29 county region surrounding the city of Atlanta. It's about 6 million people, roughly the size of the Netherlands. So, a pretty significant area in itself. From there, I left the economic development team at the Metro Chamber and went over to the city of Atlanta and worked in the city of Atlanta's economic development office, Invest Atlanta, for about 2.5 years. And then was recruited over to lead what we called at the time the LEAF team at the Georgia Department of Economic Development. So it was logistics, energy, agribusiness, and food. Really kind of like the key legacy industries in Georgia that have always been strong. Did that for about a year.
Wait, what was that? You said LEAF. Now, what does that stand for? Logistics, of course.
Logistics, energy,
Energy, okay.
agribusiness,
Egg, yeah, of course.
and food.
All right, all right.
So I used to describe it as anything you can make or ship or eat. And that was our kind of responsibility. And so did that for about a year, and then have moved into my current role leading our project management team here at the department as the division director. So we have a team of about 14 professionals that are tasked with recruiting new business to the state, across the state. And then we have a team of about 14 individuals that work in 12 regions throughout the state. They work with the local communities, work to help companies expand. We always like to joke that it's easier to keep a company happier than it is to recruit a new one. And so that our services here at the state don't end at the announcement. It's very much a continued partnership. And I think that's part of our secret sauce. We're all working together to make Georgia a better place to do business. Coming to the state was something that I always wanted to do. They say there's no one more fanatical than a convert. And I have definitely drank the Georgia tea myself, or Georgia Kool-Aid myself.
No, it's sweet tea.
It's sweet tea. Yeah.
The 14
Coke.
tablespoons of
Yeah.
of sugar.
And it's great to have a daily impact and be able to point to things that are going to be able to help your fellow citizens here in the state. And so that's my personal history, but it's also a passion project for me as well.
Yep. I told you, I think it was summer before last, I think I had 4 or 5 interviews in a row. I never look at necessarily where the companies are based, all in Georgia. And I remember saying to a friend, that wouldn't have been the case 20 years ago. Just wasn't there. Not to say that it wasn't thriving, not to say that it wasn't beginning, but it really has exploded over the last couple decades. And I'm older, so I can say this. When I was growing up, everybody who was from the South were moving north. The Detroit metro area where I'm from, you will hear some people every once in a while say it's the northernmost southern city. Why? Because everyone's grandparents or great-grandparents moved from Kentucky, Tennessee, Alabama, Georgia, north. And that, by the way, Cleveland, the same story. These are still big manufacturing hubs, and everybody's grandparents, great-grandparents all moved north. And now we're seeing their grandchildren moving back down south, and that is couldn't happen without air conditioning. Let's you don't want to live in the South without air conditioning, but also these great jobs. It would have been inconceivable in my parents' generation to move down south for a good job. It was like all the good jobs are in the Northeast and the Midwest and trickles of it out in California, but it was not in the South. It's all changed, all changed.
100%. We were talking earlier, Joe, but I think your story is very similar to my story. My grandparents were the kids of coal miners, and they said in school they taught them the 3 R's: the reading, writing, and the route to Cleveland. And that was where they went for opportunity. And I think that has shifted, and it is pulling people south to Charlotte, Raleigh, Atlanta, Nashville, Augusta, Savannah in a big way.
We had, before we hit the record button, we had identified kind of 5 areas I wanted to talk about with you. I'll give you the first one. And this is why the supply chains are moving down there. And the first one was ports. Please talk about the impact of the ports. And I told you, I was told recently on my podcast that Savannah is the fastest growing port. So start there.
Yeah, you can't really tell Georgia's story without talking about Georgia Ports Authority. They're our sister agency. They're kind of the heartbeat that drives the state of Georgia. 2 deep water ports: Port of Savannah, Port of Brunswick. Port of Brunswick is row and break bulk. Primarily, Port of Savannah is your reefers, your a little bit more your containerized cargo.
Yeah. So you said row, so please describe that.
Yeah, sorry, a little jargony. Row is roll on, roll off. And so it does speak really to the strength of the automotive industry in the Southeast too. You've got the Hyundai Meta plant coming online in Savannah that has come online. That's going to be exporting cars out of Georgia. You've got Kia on the west side of the state on the border with Alabama that makes the EV9, the Sorento, the Telluride. But it's not just them. It's Mercedes, it's BMW.
I think Ford has an assembly plant in Atlanta.
So it's actually an interesting thing about the Ford plant in Atlanta, adjacent to the airport, which is another huge port. And we'd be remiss if we didn't mention Hartsfield-Jackson. It's the world's most traveled, world's busiest, and most efficient airport. But the Ford assembly plant was there basically on airport property. And it is now the North American headquarters of Porsche.
Oh, did they move? Okay. I'm a little
With the Porsche
out of date then.
test track. Yeah. So it's funny. My grandpa had a car that was assembled at the Ford plant.
I had an uncle who worked there.
Yeah. And then on the north side of town, it's now a movie studio called Assembly, but it was the GM Doraville Assembly. And my dad had a Cutlass, a 77 Cutlass Supreme. It was his baby.
Oh, my old man had one. It was a company car. He loved it.
Yeah. And it was built in Doraville, which is just 10 miles up the road here. We have a legacy too of being an automotive hub. Having that Port of Brunswick with the roll on, roll off is huge for us. It's the number 2 port after the Port of Baltimore for road cargo in the country. The other thing, the elephant in the room, is the Port of Savannah. 3rd busiest in the country, fastest growing. It's connected by 2 of the major railroads, CSX, Norfolk Southern, both on premises. Has more reefer space, refrigerated container space than any other port on the East Coast or Gulf Coast. And it's on the Savannah River. And so it's about 20 miles inland from the actual Tybee Straits, which is where the Savannah River empties out into the Atlantic Ocean. So it's relatively well protected from natural disasters. So you compare it to some of the coastal or some of the Gulf Coast ports or some of the ports down in Florida, and it is a little bit insulated from natural disaster. But go ahead, Joe. Sorry.
I was going to say I was in Savannah for the Transportation Marketing and Sales Association, TMSA, not this summer, the summer before last. And I'd never been to Savannah. I'm a big history guy and love the history of that location. It was a little humid. Now, we probably were not there on Savannah's best day because it's a little hot and humid, and it was probably June or July. But a lot of people said, "Oh, you should come in fall," and I was like, "Yeah, probably." But absolutely stunning. And where we had the conference was adjacent to the port, so we could see the boats coming in and out. And when you have ports, you have a ton of logistics companies locate there. And if you follow where ports are built, that's where industry is happening. And if there's no industry and you build a port, you're soon going to have, but that doesn't support just Georgia. It is supporting the entire South. You would not have You're not going to get something in a port in New York or probably to support Tennessee. You're going to do it out of Savannah.
So that's the thing. And the Southeast is the fastest growing region in the US. So Georgia is closing in on 12 million people. You got 22 million people in Florida. The Carolinas are exploding in growth. You mentioned Tennessee, Nashville, Knoxville, Chattanooga, both huge growth areas. So if you're in a consumer products market and you're bringing in pack flat from overseas or something like that, it's very likely passing through Port of Savannah to Target distribution centers, Amazon distribution centers, whatever. And it's funny, you drive anywhere within 30-mile radius of the Port of Savannah, and it's those logos that you're seeing there on distribution centers.
Yep. So the second thing I want to talk to you about is this is a transportation hub, and it was probably a transportation hub before it was a supply chain hub. And because there's a lot of people that need to be supported all through the Southeast, and that was even before it became the fastest growing region of the country. So talk about the importance of the transportation hub and also the significance of it.
Yeah, Joe. So you mentioned you're a history guy. I'm a history guy too. And as an Ohioan, we hear about General Sherman and the Civil War a lot. And he is a hero at home in Ohio, but down here in Georgia, not so much. But the reason why Georgia and Atlanta and Savannah were so important was because it was a logistics hub even in the 1860s. And the legacy of that with Norfolk Southern and with CSX both having major rail yards in the Atlanta area and down by the port with short lines that connect to BNSF. It's definitely from a rail logistics standpoint, we are very well positioned. From an interstate highway system, we've got almost, if you added up the interstate and two, at least 4-lane highways in the state of Georgia, you're talking 20,000 miles of Super 2 at least road infrastructure that crisscrosses the state. You got Interstate 95 that runs from the border with Florida up to the border with South Carolina, connecting Miami up to Maine. You got Interstate 75, again, connecting Mackinac to Miami. And then I-20 running east-west, and it's extremely advantageous. And so from that standpoint, it's great. The access to market is fantastic. And then, again, you have the air cargo component with Hartsfield-Jackson and UPS shipping out of the airport there and being headquartered here in Atlanta, Norfolk Southern being headquartered here in Atlanta. It very much is a logistics hub, I would say, on par with a Dallas and a Chicago.
Well, pre-e-commerce, if somebody wanted to locate a warehouse, and I remember people talking to me about this many times, you would locate it somewhere in Indiana. So you could argue Chicago, you could also argue Dayton. And you say, because we can get to 65% of the people in this country in 2 days. And that was good enough in the olden days. And now I think warehousing, especially for e-commerce, say, we want the ability to do same day, next day. Not that everyone needs it. So now we've gone to a multiple warehouse. But you guys down there say, we can hit 80% of the country in 2 hours by flight and 2 days by truck. So I'm assuming the only places it's missing is Alaska, Hawaii, maybe the Washington and Oregon. But when you're getting 80%, that's pretty much everywhere else.
If you drew the map and you dropped the pinpoint at the Capitol building in Atlanta, the western border of that would be basically Kansas City, the Mississippi River. So I guess that would be St. Louis. But yeah, it covers a huge chunk of the country, huge access to market. And you look at the cost of doing business in Eastern Pennsylvania and some of the other more Chicago, some of the other more traditional logistics hubs. And there's a reason that Atlanta's growing as fast as it is. And it's because there's room to grow so that you can fit those 2 million square foot buildings, but also you have access to a labor that is a little bit lower cost and a little bit well trained in the arts of logistics and supply chain.
Yep. And for the reason we just discussed, 85% of the top logistics companies have a presence in Georgia. And it begins with UPS. UPS is the big dog, and it's not like UPS is moving all their own stuff. There's a lot of people working with UPS. If ideally you can be depending what you're selling, you want to be close to a UPS outlet so you can work closely with them. But given that the significance of the rail, the expressways, the air, and the location, it is why yet 85% of the top logistics companies are already down there.
Yeah, 100%. And then it's that international component as well. Having direct port service from Rotterdam to Savannah, you're connecting Europe and Georgia, just with an easy transit, and it just grows from there.
Yeah, yeah. And Rotterdam is one of the largest ports in the world. By the way, somebody just told me this the other day, guy from Rotterdam, of course. He said, "You know how New York was originally called New Amsterdam because it was people from it?" And I said, "Yeah." And he said, "Those were people who were from Rotterdam." He goes, "It should have been called New Rotterdam."
You Rotterdam?
I go, "Oh, okay. I don't know. I'm not from there. I don't know." But he said, we're the ones even then that had the port. I go, "Okay." And they still have one of the biggest ports in the world. And the fact that you guys are connected to it is significant. And it always strikes me. We always had manufacturing in the supply chain, again, born and raised in the Midwest. And as the costs got higher and higher, and I think it's the cost of doing business in that state, maybe the labor got expensive, it started bleeding out down. And by the way, I sometimes say this, states get in bad habits, just like people. And when you have a tremendous amount of success, you get a little lackadaisical. I think when companies and start moving out of the traditional manufacturing hubs and moving down to, first off, where the people are located. Not that the Midwest and the Northeast don't have a lot of people, but good reason to move down here. But I will not be at all surprised if in the coming decades you see a whole bunch of traditional manufacturing hubs, Michigan, Ohio, Indiana, Illinois. Indiana's pretty good to do business in. Just start saying, what is Georgia doing? We can't have you're not going to have the nice winter, but we can do the rest. So again, I do believe people are going to start following the leader.
Yeah, I think that Georgia's secret sauce is something that I think a lot of states wish they could get their hands on. But I really do think it comes back to a commitment to be business friendly. And it's a legacy that goes back 150 years, but it's from Reconstruction on. And it's something that has continued to today. But we joke that Georgia Power and the state were one of the first states they basically invented economic development. They started going to New York and Boston and Philadelphia after the Civil War to say, hey, bring your investments down south. And that was 180 years ago.
I remember watching one of those Civil War things, and when Atlanta was raised during the Civil War, after the fact, people said, "Oh, Atlanta built back way, way better." They said they probably would have not been the same city had it not been destroyed.
Yeah, Atlanta's seal is a phoenix rising from the ashes. And the motto of the city is resurgence, and it very much is an ethos that kind of like powers the city.
Yeah, my dad, who's long past, he loved going down south, and he would always go, "North might have won the war." He goes, "But the South seems to have won the peace."
Yeah.
Nice for a Yankee to say that. So there's a lot of investment that's happening in Georgia, and it's not just Georgia, the government spending. There's also companies. Please talk about, first off, the investment that you guys are making to make it a better state to do business in, but then also the investment that companies are making down in Georgia.
Absolutely, Joe. We definitely are responsive to business. I mentioned that team that's out in the field. They have the ears directly of the major industries in their communities, of the communities, and we take that back and we take that to heart. In July of 24, Governor Kemp announced almost $1.5 billion investment in Georgia's total transportation infrastructure. Yeah, and 250 of that is going to roads, which is almost doubling the state's portion that's going to be used for cities and counties for local transportation investments. Airport aid, so growing some of the small general aviation airports, helping them maybe dip their toe into air cargo. And then I think that most notable for today's conversation is a freight program. $500 million of that, of 1.5 billion, is going to go to 18 projects across the state that are devoted to freight carrying. And that is everything from reducing congestion on some of our interstate highways with toll lanes or truck only lanes. But it's also to increase efficiency and improve just reliability of the transportation infrastructure. So that I would say is probably one of the most notable that happened this year. But even going back to 2022, the deepening of the Savannah River to accommodate the post Panamex ships calling on the port of Savannah.
Yeah, and that's I should mention this for those who are not familiar. Boats got bigger, so the Panama Canal had to expand, I don't know, a few years back, and not every port can take those giant, what do you call them, post
Post Panamex, yeah, post Panama expansion ships, yeah.
yeah, not every port can take those big ships, and obviously, a lot of companies wanna use them because if you can be on one of those boats, you want be able to unload it wherever you wanna unload it.
And it's amazing watching them come down the Savannah River. They go right past the historic district. I think the draft now for the river is about 47 feet at low tide. And it is impressive watching some of those things go down the river because they're like small cities. It's crazy. So it's something I really enjoy when I get.
Yep. So we talked about the ports, both Savannah and Brunswick, and we talked about the transportation. And first off, it's the locations. It's 2 hours, 2 hours or 2 hour flight or 2 day drive for 80% of the country. 85% of the transportation companies are down there. And that's, first off, it's good to do business there, but it's also just geographically the right place. Years ago, I was talking to Craig Fuller, who's up in Chattanooga, and he said a big part of Chattanooga's rise as a logistics hub is because of Dalton, Georgia, where all the carpets are made. And that is good freight. And so I think Chattanooga is just outside of Georgia and in Tennessee. So it's always been a logistics hub. And now Georgia, the whole state's becoming a logistics hub. Talk about the investments. The last thing I want to talk to you about is this whole idea of being business friendly. And I want you to talk about a few things. The people, you have a lot of people down there, but the universities, and again, the investment that the companies and the government are able to make down there.
Yeah, Joe, you mentioned Dalton, and I'll just go back for a quick pitch, talk about some of the companies that have made investments in Georgia. Dalton is the carpet and flooring capital of the world. Recently, they have, within the last 10 years, they've also emerged because of a company called Q Cells that is making solar panels in Dalton. The largest solar panel manufacturing facility in the Western Hemisphere is located in Dalton, Georgia now. So it's definitely, they're a Korean company. Korean investment has been huge for the state of Georgia with investment from Q Cells, from Hyundai, from LG, from SK. And that runs the gamut from solar panels all the way to cars to batteries. So I think that is definitely something that is, pardon the pun, those kinds of industries are powering the growth here in the state of Georgia. And I think that really does come back like to our collaborative approach to business here in the state of Georgia, that secret sauce, that being friendly. We were just recently named the number one state for business by Area Development for an 11th consecutive year. It's a record for them. It's a record for us. But it is because of being business friendly and being responsive to those businesses.
And part of being business friendly, there's a lot of places that say, hey, we're business friendly, but they don't have an educated workforce. They don't have a workforce that can be afforded. And I'm not going to say, I know the cost of living in Georgia's risen as the wealth in that area has risen, but it's still, the cost of doing business is less. And I know a lot of it comes down to these universities, especially Georgia Tech, University of Georgia, and I'm sure there's many others that I'm not mentioning.
Yeah, mean, that's exactly right. And it's the university system of Georgia. So it's the big 4-year colleges that you mentioned. But it's also the technical college system of Georgia. And it is that they are the technical college system. It's amazing how business facing they are. Amazon sends their workers to Ogeechee Tech down in the Savannah area in Statesboro for training on their automated fulfillment facilities. And it's a direct partnership between Ogeechee Tech, technical college system in Georgia and Amazon. And I think that really speaks to the approach of making sure that there is a workforce in place for companies to come here from a logistics standpoint. The other thing I'll say is Georgia's still it's our largest industry is still agriculture. We are a culture of growers and builders here in Georgia.
It's easy work too.
Yeah, yeah, easy backbreaking work. But it's definitely it creates a culture of tinkerers. And I think that the technical college system does a fantastic job of really uniting those people that are skilled with their hands to prepare them for the jobs of the future, to work in a battery factory, to assemble the V9 in West Point, or to work with solar panels in Dalton. And I think that is a key component of what we do. The other thing I'll say that is that we are very well positioned with regards to the cost of power and the reliability of power. You look at some of our competitor states and they're on their own grids, and you never know if it's too hot, the power is going to shut down. If it's too cold, the power is going to shut down. You don't have that problem here in Georgia. Uh, and I think that is another big piece to the puzzle. And it's helped us with some of our recent wins, even so from the Hyundais and the Q cells and the SKs to companies. Our most recent announcement was Advanced Logistics Company that's going south of Atlanta. And they are utilizing basically to increase the productivity out of their fulfillment center, a company called Greenbox. And so it's interesting to see how that partnership with the universities, making sure that the workforce in place is really driving a lot of what the companies want and what they want to take advantage of.
Yep. I love it. I love it. So I'm going to wrap this bad boy up. I'm going to try and summarize, and then I want to get your final thoughts on the topic. I'm talking to my friend Bob Kosek. We're talking about Georgia, the future of supply chain. We've talked about a lot of stuff. First thing we talked about is one of the reasons you guys have been so successful is your port system. You have Savannah, which is a fast growing port, and it's newer port. Also, you talked about Brunswick, which is roll on, roll off, which there's not every port does that. So Savannah is more the containerized freight. Is bulk also at Brunswick?
Yeah, break bulk's down at Brunswick.
Okay. We also talked about it is already a logistics hub. It is 2 days or a 2-hour flight to 80% of the country. And the Southeast is a fast growing area. So just if you able to support Georgia and Florida, you probably got about 20% of the country population. 85% of the top logistics companies are already based in Georgia, including UPS, which is their headquarters down there. Lots of companies down there. We've seen big investment, not only from companies, but also Georgia itself is reinvesting in this. They're doubling down to make sure they do become the logistics and supply chain hub of not only the Southeast, but maybe even the whole country. We also just talked about it has to be business friendly. Again, I stress this all the time. There's a lot of states who've developed some bad habits. I won't mention them by name other than my own, Michigan. They, over time, got a little fat and happy. They said, we want more and more from the companies, and they got bloated. And we lost a plant not so long ago. I think it was some sort of newer energy plant because our cost of electricity was much higher than I think it was Kentucky or Tennessee they got it. And you look and go, wait, how is this happening? And just success breeds failure. So you guys have to be careful down there. Make sure you're not presiding over that.
We'll rest on our laurels. Yeah.
Yes. But and then we always talked about this whole idea of being a business-friendly state. It's also get large educated workforce. You have the University of Georgia. We talked about Georgia Tech. And Georgia Tech is always recognized as one of the top engineering programs in the country. I know it's top 5 on everybody's list. Anyway, we talked, let's see, did I miss anything? Education, people, investment. I think I covered everything I remember. Bob, please put a big old bow on this one for us. Final thoughts on the topic.
I think we've said it all. But I will say our goal here at the department is to be a partner to companies looking to invest or grow in Georgia. We are here to provide quality jobs for the citizens of Georgia and help make our communities a more vibrant place. And we can't do that without those relationships. And so I think if there's one thing that I hope people take away from today's chat is it's that we're here to help, and there's no request too small. Our doors are open. You can catch us at any number of industry trade shows, like the NatBat conference, which is a big battery conference, or even some of our more supply chain ProMat, those kinds of shows. And you see us with our peach logo on, and don't be afraid to say hi. But we're definitely here. We're definitely here to be a resource, and we're definitely committed to the successful growth of the state's economy and those businesses that choose to ultimately make Georgia home.
I love it. Bob, I'll make sure I put a link to your LinkedIn profile, a link to your website, and any other links you and your go-to-market team give me. I'll make sure I put those in the show notes so people can reach out and talk to you. I really appreciate you taking the time, and we went way over my time with you. So thank you so much for being so patient.
Absolutely, man. You get two Midwesterners in the room, and that's gonna happen every time.
Yeah. Anyway, thank you so much for taking the time.
Absolutely, Joe. Thank you.
And thank all of you for listening to my podcast. Your support is very much appreciated. Until next time, onward and upward. You have been listening to the Logistics of Logistics podcast, where we engage with leaders in the logistics and supply chain community. If you like what you hear, please subscribe, hit the like button, and leave us a nice review on Apple or Spotify or wherever else you listen. Also, please check out our videos on YouTube and connect with us on LinkedIn. We're very big on LinkedIn. And you can also reach us on the logisticsoflogistics.com, our website.